The Château de Lyon loomed through the 1930s mist, its turrets shrouded in secrets. Inside the opulent study, Countess Elodie de Lyon lay lifeless across her mahogany desk, a poisoned letter clutched in her pale hand. The air was heavy with roses and wax, a chill draught whispering through an open window. Hercule Poirot, summoned by her desperate note, surveyed the scene with piercing eyes. The lion rampant seal on the letter, unfamiliar and bold, hinted at a calculated crime. Who had wielded this fatal pen? Poirot's moustache twitched. The truth, he vowed, would not remain hidden. Chapter 1. The Shadowed Study. The Château de Lyon stood like a monolith against the winter sky, its turrets shrouded in the swirling mist of a 1930s French evening. The frost clung to its ancient stone walls, glinting faintly under the pale glow of a crescent moon. Within, the air was thick with the scent of old roses, their fragrance mingling with the acrid tang of sealing wax and the faint metallic hint of something sinister. The grand study, a sanctum of opulence, was a tableau of elegance frozen in time. Velvet drapes in deep burgundy framed tall windows, a gilded mirror reflected the flicker of a dying fire, and a mahogany desk dominated the room, its surface cluttered with papers and a silver inkstand. At its center lay Countess Elodie de Lyon, her once regal form slumped forward, her cheek pressed against a letter clutched in her lifeless hand. Her eyes, wide and unseeing, stared into eternity, their icy blue dulled by death. A single bead of sweat, now cold, traced a path down her temple, a silent testament to her final moments. The room was silent, but for the faint creak of a window, left ajar, admitting a chill that curled through the air like a ghostly finger. The fire in the grate sputtered, casting long shadows that danced across the walls, as if mocking the stillness of the scene. Elodie's dress, a cascade of sapphire silk, pooled around her, its folds undisturbed save for the faint tremor of a draught, intrigued him. "Monsieur Poirot, I fear for my life. Letters arrive, each more menacing than the last. Come quickly, I beseech you." Now, standing in the study, Poirot felt the weight of her words. Too late, perhaps, but not too late for justice. He stepped forward, his cane tapping softly on the polished floor, and paused beside the body. With a gloved hand, he gently lifted the letter from Elodie's grasp, noting the faint tremor in her fingers even in death. The paper was heavy, of fine quality, but its texture was unusual, slightly rougher than the others on the desk. He held it to the light, his keen eyes tracing the faint watermark of a foreign mill. "Curieux," he murmured, his voice a soft cadence in the silent room. The wax seal, now cracked, revealed no residue of poison. But Poirot's instincts told him the letter was the key. He replaced it carefully, as if to preserve the sanctity of the scene, and turned his attention to the desk. The desk was a treasure trove of clues, each item a potential thread in the tapestry of murder. A crystal inkwell, half empty, bore traces of blue ink that matched the letter's script. A quill lay abandoned, its tip stained. A small pile of correspondence, neatly stacked, suggested Elodie's meticulous nature. Yet one letter stood apart, its envelope unopened, its seal identical to the fatal one. Poirot's moustache twitched. A second letter, a second clue. He did not touch it, not yet. Instead, he circled the room, his movements deliberate, his mind cataloguing every detail. The open window, the faint smear of mud on the sill, the faint scent of lavender that lingered near the drapes. "The stage is set," he said to himself, "but the players remain hidden." The chateau's staff, alerted by a maid's scream, had gathered in the corridor, their whispers a low hum of fear and suspicion. Poirot turned to face them, his presence commanding silence. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and precise, "a tragedy has befallen this house. The Countess Elodie de Lyon is dead, and it is no accident. I, Hercule Poirot, as his childhood, had resentment festered into violence. And Isabel, quiet and unassuming, hid something in her downcast eyes, fear, perhaps, or guilt. Poirot's grey cells, as he called them, hummed with possibility. The truth, he thought, lies in the silences between their words. He returned to the desk, his attention drawn to the unopened letter. Its seal, like the first, bore the lion rampant, a symbol that gnawed at his memory. He had seen it before, perhaps in a heraldry book or a case long past. A signature, he mused, but of whom? He examined the window again, noting the mud's texture, fresh, as if tracked in that very night. The fire, now embers, offered no warmth, but a faint ash in the grate caught his eye. He knelt, retrieving a charred fragment of paper, its edges curling like a dying leaf. The words were faint but legible. "Your secrets will—" The rest was lost to flame. Poirot's lips curved in a faint smile. The clue, burned, but not destroyed. The chateau's clock chimed midnight, its toll echoing through the silent halls. Poirot straightened, his mind a whirl of order and method. Elodie's death was no random act. It was a performance, staged with precision. The poisoned letter, the open window, the burned fragment, all were props in a deadly play. But who was the playwright? He turned to the staff, still huddled in the corridor. "Return to your quarters," he instructed. "But know this, the killer is among us, and Hercule Poirot does not rest until justice is served." As the group dispersed, their footsteps fading into the night, Poirot lingered in the study. The mist outside thickened, curling around the chateau like a shroud. He approached the unopened letter once more, his gloved fingers hovering over the seal. To open it was to risk contamination, yet to ignore it was to miss a vital clue. He hesitated, his mind weighing the danger against the need for truth. "The lion rampant," he whispered. "It speaks. But what does it say?" Moustache twitching, as he noted the subtle tells of guilt, fear, or defiance. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice a velvet blade, "a murder has been committed, and the killer sits among us. Hercule Poirot will uncover the truth. But first, I must know you." Julien Morel, the Countess's secretary, perched on the edge of a velvet settee, his fingers fidgeting with the gold cufflinks that gleamed too brightly for a man of his station. His dark hair was slicked back, but a single strand fell forward, betraying his composure. He had been Elodie's shadow, managing her correspondence and finances with a devotion that bordered on obsession. Yet, Poirot noted, his eyes darted to the door, as if he longed to flee. Was it fear of discovery, or merely the strain of grief? Beside him sat Madame Vivienne Laurent, a socialite whose beauty was as sharp as her tongue. Her emerald gown shimmered, and she sipped brandy from a crystal glass, her lips curling in a smile that held no warmth. Vivienne had been Elodie's rival, their rivalry a public spectacle in Lyon's glittering salons. Her presence here, so soon after the murder, was no coincidence, Poirot thought. Across the room, Claude Beaumont slouched in an armchair, his broad shoulders tense, his jaw set in a scowl. The Countess's nephew, recently disinherited, wore his resentment like a badge. His tweed suit was rumpled, and his knuckles whitened as he gripped the armrests. Elodie had cut him from her will, favoring charities over family, a slight that had left him bitter, perhaps bitter enough to kill. Near the fireplace stood Isabelle Dubois, the maid, her plain grey dress a stark contrast to the room's opulence. Her hands, clasped tightly, trembled, and her eyes remained fixed on the floor. She had been with Elodie for years, a silent presence in the chateau. Yet Poirot sensed a depth to her silence, a secret buried beneath her meek exterior. Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping a deliberate rhythm on the parquet floor. "The Countess Elodie was poisoned," he announced, pausing for effect, "by a letter laced with a rare toxin, absorbed malice," and Poirot tilted his head. "Madame Laurent, your rivalry with the Countess was well known. Did her success provoke you to more than words?" Vivian's smile tightened, but she said nothing, sipping her brandy with deliberate nonchalance. Poirot turned to Claude, whose scowl deepened. "Monsieur Beaumont, your aunt's will left you nothing. Did this injustice drive you to vengeance?" Claude's fists clenched, his voice low. "She was cruel, but I didn't kill her. I was out walking that night." Poirot's moustache twitched. "A walk, with no witnesses. Most convenient." Isabelle flinched as Poirot's gaze fell on her. "Mademoiselle Dubois, you found the body. Yet you did not touch the letter, you say. Why such caution?" Isabelle's voice was barely a whisper. I was afraid, monsieur. It looked wrong." Poirot noted the tremor in her hands, the way her eyes avoided his. Fear, yes, but of what? He stepped back, addressing the group. "Each of you had reason to resent Madame la Comtesse. Debts, slights, secrets, motives abound. But the truth hides in your silences, and Poirot will find it." The salon's clock chimed, its toll a somber reminder of the hour. Poirot's mind churned, his grey cells arranging the puzzle pieces. The poisoned letter, the open window, the burned fragment. He recalled the charred words. "Your secrets will..." What secrets had Elodie guarded? He glanced at the unopened letter on her desk, its lion rampant seal a nagging enigma. It was not the Lyon family crest, yet it appeared deliberate, a signature of intent. He resolved to examine it further, but first, he needed to probe deeper into the suspects' lives. He began with Julia, whose ambition was as transparent as the chandelier's crystals. "Monsieur Morel, you managed Madame's finances. Were there irregularities?" Julien's eyes widened, but servant entered, pale and trembling. "Monsieur Poirot," he stammered, "I found this in the fireplace." He held out a charred scrap of paper, its edges blackened. Poirot took it, his gloved fingers careful. The fragment bore a single word: betrayed. His pulse quickened. Another clue, another thread in the web. He dismissed the servant, his mind already tracing connections. The lion's seal, the burned fragments, the cloaked figure. Each was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained elusive. Poirot addressed the group once more. "The killer is clever, but not cleverer than Hercule Poirot. You will remain in the chateau, under my watch. The truth will not hide forever." The suspects exchanged glances, some defiant, others fearful. Vivian rose, her gown rustling. "This is absurd. I have engagements in Paris." Poirot's voice was firm. "You will stay, madame. Death does not respect schedules." She sat, her eyes flashing, but said no more. As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered, his gaze returning to the fireplace. The burned fragment gnawed at him. Betrayed suggested a personal vendetta, a wound deeper than money or envy. He thought of Elodie's note to him, her fear of the letters. Had she known her killer? He crossed to the window, noting the mist's thickness, how it cloaked the grounds like a conspirator. The chateau itself seemed to hold its breath, its walls whispering secrets only he could decipher. The poisoned pen. The Château de Lyon's study, bathed in the pale light of a 1930s dawn, seemed to hold its secrets tighter as the mist outside thickened. Hercule Poirot stood before the late Countess Elodie de Lyon's mahogany desk, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his eyes sharp as they roamed the scene of her death. The room was unchanged since the night before. The velvet drapes hung heavy, the gilded mirror reflected the flicker of a rekindled fire, and Elodie's body had been removed, leaving only the echo of her presence. The letter that had killed her, laced with a rare South American deliberate choice. He examined the desk's pile of correspondence, noting their uniformity. Fine French paper, smooth as silk, bearing Elodie's monogram. The fatal letter stood apart, its watermark foreign, its weight heavier. A red herring, perhaps, he mused, his voice a soft cadence in the silent room. Or a signature of intent. Poirot turned his attention to the unopened letter from the salon, still in his pocket. He hesitated to break its seal, wary of the toxin, but its presence was a taunt, a challenge from the killer. With a magnifying glass, he studied the lion rampant, its lines crisp, almost defiant. This crest, he said to himself, it is not of Lyon, yet it speaks of purpose. He placed the letter beside the fatal one, noting their identical seals. A pattern was emerging, but its meaning remained elusive. He recalled the burned fragment from the fireplace. Your secrets will. And now the word betrayed from the salon. The killer was weaving a narrative, each letter a chapter in a deadly story. The study's open window drew his eye, the faint smear of mud on the sill still fresh. He leaned closer, noting the texture. Clay. Damp, likely from the chateau's grounds. Had someone entered or exited here? The mud suggested a recent intrusion, but the window's latch was undisturbed, its mechanism smooth. Poirot's mind raced. The window is a distraction, perhaps, but the mud is truth. He stepped back, his cane tapping softly, and surveyed the room anew. A locked drawer in Elodie's desk caught his attention, its brass keyhole gleaming. He tested it. Secure, unyielding. What do you hide, madame? He asked the absent countess, his voice tinged with curiosity. He summoned Julien Morel, the secretary, whose nervous demeanor in the salon had piqued Poirot's interest. Julien entered, his cufflinks glinting, his face pale under the study's lamplight. Monsieur Morel, Poirot began, his tone measured. You brittle. Gossip. Nothing more. Elodie thrived on drama. Poirot noted her deflection, her refusal to meet his gaze. Drama, madame, or danger? He dismissed them both, his mind turning to the locked drawer. A search for the key proved fruitless, neither among Elodie's papers nor in her personal effects. He considered forcing the lock, but resisted. The answer lay in patience, in method. Instead, he returned to the correspondence, sifting through letters of business, charity, and social invitations. One, half hidden beneath a blotter, caught his eye. A note, unsigned, in a hurried script. Your secrets will bury you, it read, the words chilling in their simplicity. Poirot's pulse quickened. Another threat, concealed but not destroyed. He placed it beside the burned fragments, their messages aligning like pieces of a shattered mirror. The chateau's clock struck 7, its chime echoing through the silent halls. Poirot stepped to the window, the mist outside now tinged with the grey of dawn. He thought of the suspects. Julien, whose ambition might mask greed. Vivian, whose jealousy was a poison of its own. Claude, whose resentment burned like the fire in the grate. Isabelle, whose fear hinted at a deeper truth. Each had access to Elodie's world, each a motive to end it. But the letters, the seals, the toxin, these were the work of a mind both cunning and deliberate. The poison is but the method, Poirot said aloud, and the motive lies elsewhere. He recalled Isabelle's claim of a cloaked figure, a stranger near the chateau. Was it a fabrication or a clue? He made a mental note to question her further, to probe the cracks in her story. Claude's alibi, a solitary walk, remained unverified, his anger a potential spark for violence. Vivian's knowledge of Elodie's enemies was too precise, too rehearsed. And Julien, with his ledgers and cufflinks, hid something in his nervous glances. Poirot's grey cells hummed, arranging the facts into order. The lion rampant seal was the key, a potential clue. The killer plays a game, he said, his voice low. But Poirot does not lose. He turned to Isabelle, who lingered by the door. Mademoiselle, you saw the cloaked figure. Describe him again. Her voice trembled. Tall, hooded. I couldn't see his face. It was dark near the garden. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloguing her words. Truth or another distraction? As Isabelle left, Poirot sat at the desk, the letters before him like a challenge. The toxin, the seals, the threats, all pointed to a mind that reveled in control. He thought of Elodie, her elegance, her secrets. What had she known, or done, to invite such a fate? The burned fragments, the hidden letters, the mud on the sill. These were threads in a tapestry of deceit. He leaned back, his eyes half closed, his mind the whirlwind of order and method. The killer is close, he whispered, and the letters will betray them. Chapter 4. Motives in the Mist. The Château de Lyon study, steeped in the grey light of a 1930s morning, seemed to pulse with secrets as Hercule Poirot stood before the open drawer, its cache of letters a silent challenge. The air was heavy with the scent of old paper and wax, mingling with the faint chill seeping through the still-open window. The creak of the floorboards moments earlier had set his senses on edge, but a swift glance revealed nothing, just shadows cast by the flickering fire. Poirot's mustache twitched, his mind alert. The killer is bald, he murmured, to linger so close. He returned to the letters, each sealed with the lion rampant crest, their presence a deliberate taunt. The brass key, found by Isabelle Dubois, lay beside them, its etched lion motif a mirror to the seals. Poirot's grey cells churned, weaving connections between the toxin, the threats, and the elusive figure in the cloaked night. He began his interviews in the chateau's library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound volumes, their spines gilded but worn. The mist outside forge her signature to secure these funds. Julian's breath caught, his denial swift but unsteady. Never. I served her loyally. Any errors were honest. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze unrelenting. Loyalty, monsieur, does not tremble. You sought gain, perhaps enough to kill. Julien's protest was vehement, but Poirot noted the sweat on his brow, the flicker of fear in his eyes. Next came Madame Vivienne Laurent, her tailored suit a stark contrast to the library's somber tones. She sank into a chair with the grace of a predator, her smile a blade thinly veiled. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice honeyed, "you waste time with Julien's petty accounts. Elodie's death was personal. Someone hated her enough to plan this theatrical end." Poirot tilted his head, his mustache twitching. "Madame Laurent, your rivalry with the Countess was no secret. Did your jealousy drive you to more than whispers?" Vivienne's laugh was sharp, but her fingers tightened around her cigarette holder. "Jealousy? I outshone her in every salon. But yes, I spread rumors, nothing more. She had darker enemies." Poirot's smile was faint. "Enemies you knew, perhaps, or created?" Her eyes flashed, but she offered no reply, only a puff of smoke that curled like a warning. Claude Beaumont entered next, his broad frame filling the doorway, his scowl a permanent fixture. The disinherited nephew carried his anger like a storm cloud, his tweed suit rumpled from restless pacing. "Monsieur Beaumont," Poirot said, his tone measured, "your aunt's will left you nothing. Did this betrayal fuel your rage?" Claude's fists clenched, his voice low and bitter. "She was a tyrant, cutting me off for her precious charities. She mocked me, called me unworthy, but I didn't kill her. I was walking the grounds that night." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Alone, with no one to confirm. Tell me, did you hold over Isabel was a motive? Fragile, but real." The interviews complete, Poirot paced the library, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. Each suspect bore a motive. Julien's greed, Vivienne's envy, Claude's vengeance, Isabel's fear. The letters, the toxin, the lion seal, these were the tools of a calculated mind. But whose? He recalled the burned fragments. "Your secrets will..." and "betrayed." And the hidden letters in the drawer, the threatening note, "Your secrets will bury you," suggested a personal vendetta, a wound deeper than money or status. Elodie's past, he sensed, held the key, but its contours remained obscured. A servant's interruption broke his reverie. "Monsieur Poirot," the young man said, his voice trembling, "I saw something last night, near the garden. A figure, cloaked, moving toward the chateau." Poirot's eyes sharpened. "Describe this figure, monsieur." The servant hesitated. "Tall, dark cloak. I couldn't see the face. It was near midnight, before the Countess was found." Poirot's pulse quickened. The cloaked figure, mentioned by both Isabel and now the servant, was no phantom. But was it the killer, or another distraction? He dismissed the servant, his mind cataloguing the clue. The mud on the windowsill, the cloaked figure, the lion seal, each was a thread in a tapestry of deceit. He returned to the study, drawn to the open window. The mist outside was impenetrable, cloaking the grounds in secrecy. He examined the sill again, the mud now dry but distinct. Clay from the garden path. An intruder, perhaps, he mused, or a ruse to suggest one. He thought of Vivienne's wardrobe, rumored to include a dark cloak, a gift from Elodie herself. Was it coincidence or design? He made a note to inspect it, to test the servant's claim. The letters in the drawer, still unopened, called to him, but he resisted, wary of their potential danger. Instead, he focused on the threatening note, its words echoing in his mind. "Your secrets will bury you." Elodie had been hiding something. Letters, the mud, the cloaked figure, all pointed to a mind that reveled in control, in manipulation. "The killer is here," he whispered, "and their arrogance will be their undoing." He paused at the study door, his hand on the knob, his senses alert to the silence of the chateau. Chapter 5. The Wax Seal's Secret. The Château de Lyon stood silent under a 1930s sky, its turrets swallowed by a mist that clung like a shroud. Inside the study, Hercule Poirot stood before the late Countess Elodie de Lyon's desk, the cache of letters from the locked drawer spread before him. Each bore the lion rampant seal, its bold lines a challenge to his intellect. The air was thick with the scent of wax and old roses, undercut by a faint metallic tang that lingered from the poison that had claimed Elodie's life. The open window admitted a chill, the faint smear of mud on the sill a reminder of the cloaked figure glimpsed in the garden moments before. Poirot's moustache twitched, his grey cells humming with the weight of new clues. "The seal is a signature," he murmured, "and signatures betray the hand that writes them." He held one of the unopened letters to the light, his magnifying glass tracing the lion rampant's contours. The crest was unfamiliar, not of the Lyon family, yet deliberate in its craftsmanship. Its edges were crisp, pressed with force, suggesting urgency or intent. Poirot recalled the heraldry book in the chateau's library, its pages filled with sigils of noble houses. He resolved to consult it, certain the lion held the key to the killer's identity. The threatening note, "Your secrets will bury you," and the burned fragments, "Your secrets will," and "betrayed," echoed in his mind, weaving a narrative of vengeance. But whose? He set the letter down, wary of the toxin that had felled Elodie, and turned to the mud on the sill. The clay, now dry, matched the garden path, but the window's latch was undisturbed. A ruse, perhaps, he mused, to suggest an outsider. Poirot's thoughts were interrupted by the memory of the cloaked figure, a shadow. Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "And yet you found the key to the drawer, hidden in Madame's room. Did you search for it, or was it placed for you to find?" Isabel's face paled, her voice a whisper. "I found it by chance, under her jewelry box. I swear it." Poirot noted the tremor in her hands, the fear in her eyes. "Fear, mademoiselle, is a confession of its own. What did Madame know of your past?" Isabel's tears fell, but she said nothing, retreating into silence. Next, Poirot called Claude Beaumont, the disinherited nephew, whose anger seemed to fill the room. His tweed suit was creased, his knuckles white as he gripped the chair. "Monsieur Beaumont," Poirot said, "your alibi, the walk in the grounds, lacks witnesses. Did you see this cloaked figure?" Claude's scowl deepened. "I told you I saw nothing. I was alone, clearing my head." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Clearing your head or plotting revenge? Your aunt's will left you nothing. Did her betrayal drive you to act?" Claude's voice was low, bitter. "She deserved her fate, but I didn't touch her." Poirot noted the defiance in his eyes, the hint of truth mingled with evasion. Vivienne Laurent entered next, her tailored suit replaced by a silk blouse, her composure a carefully crafted mask. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice dripping with disdain, "this obsession with cloaks and letters is tiresome. Elodie's death was her own doing, her secrets made enemies. Poirot tilted his head. Madame Laurent, you speak of secrets, yet your cloak, a gift from the Countess, was seen in the garden. Explain. Vivienne's smile faltered, her fingers tightening on her cigarette holder. A gift, yes, but I haven't worn it in months. Someone is playing games, monsieur. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Games, madame, or truths you wish to hide. Julien Morel was the last, his cufflinks catching the firelight as he stood nervously before the desk. Monsieur Morel, Poirot said, your ledger whispered, thinking of Isabelle. A coincidence? Or a clue? He made a note to investigate her past further. Her fear, a thread he could not ignore. Back in the study, Poirot examined Julien's ledgers, borrowed from the Chateau's office. The discrepancies were subtle but deliberate. Small sums siphoned to an unnamed account. Blackmail, perhaps? Poirot mused. Or a payment for silence. He thought of Elodie's threatening letters, their tone personal, vindictive. Had she crossed someone powerful, or betrayed a confidence? The lion seal, he decided, was no accident. It was a mark of identity, a boast from the killer. A servant's voice broke his reverie. Monsieur Poirot, I found this in the Countess's wardrobe. He held out a folded cloak, dark and heavy, its hem stained with clay. Poirot's pulse quickened as he examined it. The mud matched the sill. The fabric matched Vivienne's rumored gift. Merci, he said, dismissing the servant. He laid the cloak on the desk, its weight a tangible clue. Was Vivienne the cloaked figure? Or was the cloak planted to mislead? Poirot's method demanded he assume nothing, but the evidence was mounting. He returned to the letters, selecting one from the drawer. Its seal was identical, but its paper was lighter, as if meant for a different purpose. He hesitated, wary of the toxin, but his curiosity burned. Using gloves, he broke the seal, unfolding the letter with care. The words were stark. You cannot hide forever. No signature, no address, but the lion rampant was unmistakable. Poirot's mind raced. The letters were a campaign, a psychological assault leading to murder. But why the seal? Was it pride or a misstep? The Chateau's clock chimed, its toll a reminder of time's pressure. Poirot stepped to the window, the mist outside now tinged with the pale light of noon. The cloaked figure, the mud, the letters, all pointed to a killer within the chateau. Yet the seal suggested the tall windows casting a muted glow across the room. Hercule Poirot stood before a bookcase, his gloved hand resting on the fallen heraldry book, its pages splayed where it had tumbled from the shelf. The soft thud that had drawn him here moments ago lingered in his mind. A deliberate act or a careless one, he could not yet say. Behind the shelf, a hidden compartment gaped open, its wooden panel ajar, revealing a small bundle of papers tied with a faded ribbon. Poirot's moustache twitched, his grey cells alight with possibility. The past, he murmured, is a ghost that haunts this chateau. And ghosts, they leave traces. He retrieved the bundle with care, noting the dust that clung to it, undisturbed for years. The papers were letters, yellowed with age, their ink faded but legible. Each bore a different seal, not the lion rampant, but a rose entwined with a serpent, the crest of a Parisian family from Elodie's youth. Poirot's pulse quickened as he read the first, a love letter from a man named Armand Dubois, dated 1898. My dearest Elodie, it began. Your heart is my compass, but your ambition will be our ruin. The words were tender yet ominous, hinting at a scandal that had shaped Elodie's life. Poirot recalled the Lion Rampant's possible link to a Dubois family in the heraldry book, an extinct noble line, perhaps connected to Isabelle, the maid. Was this a clue, or another layer of deception? The threatening letters from the study drawer, each sealed with the Lion Rampant, lay on a nearby table. Their stark warnings, "Your secrets will bury you," echoing the past's bitterness. Poirot's mind churned, connecting the old letters to the new. Had Elodie's actions decades ago sown the seeds of her murder? He thought of the cloaked figure in the garden, the mud on the sill, the burned fragments. Your secrets will, and betrayed. The killer was weaving a narrative, one rooted in history, and Poirot was determined to unravel it. He summoned Isabelle Dubois to the library, her grey dress a shadow.
They argued in her study. I heard threats.
Poirot dismissed her, his mind racing. Isabelle's fear was genuine, but her story was incomplete. He turned to Claude Beaumont next, the disinherited nephew, whose anger seemed to darken the room as he entered. Monsieur Beaumont, Poirot said, holding up the old letters. These speak of Elodie's youth, a scandal that ruined the man. Was your father that man, driven to disgrace? Claude's fists clenched, his voice raw. My father was a merchant, broken by her lies. She spread rumors of fraud, stripped him of everything. But I'm not his son by blood, just a nephew she raised, then discarded. Poirot's moustache twitched. Discarded, and thus enraged. Did you seek vengeance with poison? Claude's eyes flashed. I hated her, but I didn't kill her. Poirot noted the pain in his voice, a wound deeper than greed. Vivienne Laurent swept in next, her silk blouse catching the firelight, her smile a mask of disdain. Monsieur Poirot, she said, you dig through ancient letters while the killer laughs. Elodie's past was her own undoing. Poirot tilted his head. Madame Laurent, you know much of her past. Did you uncover these scandals to ruin her? Vivienne's laugh was sharp. I didn't need to. Her enemies did that for her. Ask about her Parisian days. She left broken hearts and fortunes behind. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And your cloak, madame, stained with mud. Was it you in the garden? Vivienne's composure wavered. I told you, I haven't worn it. Someone is framing me. Poirot's smile was faint, his suspicion unvoiced. Julien Morel entered last, his cufflinks glinting, his face pale. Monsieur Morel, Poirot said, your ledgers show payments to an unknown party. Were you paying for secrets about Madame's past? Julien's hands shook, his denial swift. I managed her investments, nothing more. I know nothing of her youth. Poirot held up the old letters. Yet these speak of Armand Dubois, a name that echoes in the lion seal. Did you forge it to hide your theft? Elodie's Parisian years, dispatching a servant to the local gendarmerie. The answer, he sensed, lay in her past. A scandal, a betrayal, a debt unpaid. The threatening letters, the toxin, the burned fragments, all pointed to a personal vendetta, but the killer's identity danced just beyond his grasp. He returned to the study, the hidden compartment's discovery a spark in his investigation. The old letters, tied with their faded ribbon, were a window into Elodie's youth. But the Lion Rampant was the present, a symbol of murder. Poirot examined the threatening letters again, their stark warnings a chorus of hate. You cannot hide forever, one read, its tone intimate, vengeful. He thought of Claude's rage, Vivienne's envy, Julien's greed, Isabelle's fear. Each had motive, but the seal tied them to a deeper history. He recalled the mud on the sill, the cloaked figure. Was it an outsider, or one of the household playing a part? He made a note to inspect Vivienne's wardrobe further, to test her claim of innocence. The chateau's clock chimed, its toll a reminder of time's pressure. Poirot stepped to the window, the mist outside a veil over the truth. He thought of Elodie's elegance, her guarded nature, her fear of the letters. She knew her killer, he whispered, and the past betrayed her. He turned to the hidden compartment, searching for more clues, but found only dust. The letters, old and new, were the key, but their meaning eluded him. He needed the police records, the heraldry's truth, the cloaked figure's face. As he left the library, a faint rustle came from the corridor. A paper slipped under the door, its lion rampant seal gleaming in the dim light. Poirot's heart raced as he retrieved it, his gloves protecting him from potential poison. The note was brief. The truth is closer than you think. His eyes narrowed, his mind a whirl of order and method. The killer taunts, he said. But Poirot does not falter. Chapter 7. Youth had arrived, delivered by a breathless servant from the gendarmerie. The dossier was thin, but revealing. Elodie, in her 20s, had been entangled in a scandal with Armand Dubois, a diplomat whose career crumbled after she exposed his financial misdeeds. The records hinted at a public humiliation, a ruined reputation, and a man broken by betrayal. Armand had died years later, destitute, but left a son, Etienne, who had vanished from public record. Poirot's pulse quickened. Was Etienne the cloaked figure seeking vengeance for his father, or was Claude Beaumont, Elodie's disinherited nephew, tied to this past? Claude had denied being Armand's son, but his rage suggested a deeper wound. Poirot set the dossier aside, noting the absence of the lion rampant crest in the records, a clue, perhaps, that the seal was a modern creation. He returned to the threatening letters from Elodie's desk, their lion seals a chorus of accusation. The latest note, slipped under the library door, was unpoisoned but deliberate, its message a challenge to his intellect. Poirot's mind churned, connecting the old love letters from Armand, the burned fragments, "Your secrets will," and "betrayed," and the new threats. The killer was orchestrating a narrative, but the seal's origin remained elusive. The heraldry book had linked the lion rampant to the extinct Dubois family, yet Isabelle Dubois, the maid, denied any connection. Was she lying, or was the seal a deliberate misdirection? Poirot summoned Vivienne Laurent to the salon, her presence as commanding as ever in a silk dress that caught the firelight. Her smile was a mask, but her eyes betrayed unease. "Madame Laurent," Poirot began, his voice calm but piercing. "You know much of Elodie's past. Too much, perhaps. Did you uncover this scandal with Armand Dubois?" Vivienne's laugh was sharp, her cigarette holder poised. "I hired a detective to dig into her life, yes. Her Parisian days were full of skeletons. Broken hearts, ruined men. But I didn't need to kill her. Her enemies did that." Poirot tilted his head, the sweat on his brow, the crack in his polished facade. Claude Beaumont entered next, his anger a storm cloud. "Monsieur Beaumont," Poirot said, "the records speak of Armand Dubois, a man ruined by your aunt. Are you his son, seeking vengeance?" Claude's fists clenched, his voice raw. "I told you, I'm her nephew, not his son." She raised me after my parents died, then cast me out. I didn't need poison. I wanted her to live and suffer." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Suffer or die? Your walk that night. Did you see the cloaked figure?" Claude's eyes flickered. "No, I was alone." Poirot noted the lie, subtle but present, in the shift of his gaze. Isabelle Dubois was last, her grey dress blending with the salon's shadows, her hands wringing her apron. "Mademoiselle Dubois," Poirot said gently, "you heard Élodie argue with a stranger. Was it Etienne Dubois, Armand's son?" Isabelle's tears fell, her voice a whisper. "I don't know, monsieur. The voice was deep, angry. I didn't see his face." Poirot leaned forward. "And the lion seal, does it belong to your family?" Isabelle shook her head, her fear palpable. "No, I swear, my family has no crest." Poirot's eyes softened, but his mind was relentless. "Fear, mademoiselle, hides truth. What did Élodie hold over you?" Isabelle's silence was her only answer. The interviews complete, Poirot paced the salon, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. The police records had clarified Élodie's past, but muddied the present. Etienne Dubois, Armand's son, was a ghost, his whereabouts unknown. Was he the cloaked figure? Or was the seal a red herring, planted to mislead? Poirot thought of Vivienne's detective, Julien's payments, Claude's rage, Isabelle's fear. Each was a suspect, but the lion's seal tied them to no phantom, but its purpose remained unclear. Was it Etienne, or one of the household playing a part? Poirot crossed to the window, the mist outside a veil over the truth. He thought of Élodie's Parisian scandal, her betrayal of Armand. Had it sparked a vendetta that spanned decades? The lion seal, he decided, was a deliberate choice, a symbol of pride or revenge. He made a note to trace Etienne Dubois further, to confirm his existence. The cloak, the mud, the letters, all pointed to a killer within the chateau, exploiting the past to mask the present. As he turned from the window, a soft rustle came from the corridor. A paper, slipped under the door, its lion seal gleaming. Poirot retrieved it, his gloves protecting him from potential poison. The note was stark. "You seek the truth, but it will burn." His eyes narrowed, his mind a whirl of order and method. "The killer grows bold," he whispered, "but boldness betrays." He slipped the note into his pocket, resolved to set a trap. The chateau's secrets were unraveling, and Poirot would not rest until the killer's face was revealed. Chapter 8. The Detective's Gambit. The Château de Lyon's grand salon shimmered under the chandelier's fractured light, its opulence a stark contrast to the tension that gripped the room. The mist outside, unrelenting in its 1930s grip, pressed against the tall windows, cloaking the world in secrecy. Hercule Poirot stood at the centre, his small frame a beacon of resolve, his eyes sharp as they scanned the assembled household. The note he had found moments ago, slipped under the study door and bearing the lion rampant seal, lay heavy in his pocket. Its words, "You seek the truth, but it will burn," were a taunt, a challenge from a killer growing bolder. The faint creak on the staircase, the glimpse of a cloaked shadow descending, had set his senses alight. "The killer is near," Poirot murmured, his moustache twitching. "And their arrogance will be their undoing." Laced with a rare South American toxin, the lion rampant seal, linked to the extinct Dubois family. The old love letters from Armand Dubois, hinting at a scandal that ruined him. The police records confirming Elodie's betrayal. And the cloaked figure, seen by Isabelle and a servant, its mud-stained cloak tied to Vivienne. The burned fragments, "Your secrets will," and "betrayed." And the threatening notes, "Your secrets will bury you. You cannot hide forever," wove a narrative of vengeance. But the latest note, addressed to Poirot himself, suggested the killer was watching, anticipating his moves. He began with Juliane, whose nervous demeanor betrayed more than ambition. "Monsieur Morel," Poirot said, his voice calm but piercing. "Your ledgers show payments to an E.D. Etienne Dubois, perhaps, the son of Armand. Did you pay him to forge the lion seal?" Julien's face flushed, his denial swift. "No, monsieur. The payments were for a courier, for investments. I swear I know no Etienne." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Yet your ledgers lie, and lies point to guilt." Julien's hands trembled, his gaze flickering to the door as if plotting escape. Vivienne was next, her composure a fragile mask. "Madame Laurent," Poirot said, "your cloak, stained with garden mud, places you at the scene. Did you wear it to deliver the fatal letter?" Vivienne's laugh was brittle, her eyes flashing. "I told you, I haven't touched it. Someone planted that mud to frame me." Poirot tilted his head. "Frame or expose? Your knowledge of Elodie's scandal is precise. Did you unearth it to destroy her?" Vivienne's cigarette trembled. "I hired a detective, yes, but I didn't kill her. Her enemies were many." Poirot's smile was faint, his suspicion, tension crackling. Isabelle suddenly bolted from the room, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. Poirot's heart raced. She was fleeing. But why? He signaled a servant to follow, then continued his gambit, his voice steady. "The killer believes they have outwitted Poirot, but the lion seal is their mistake. It is a signature, a mark of pride, and pride leads to error." The room was silent, save for the fire's crackle and the distant chime of the chateau's clock. Vivienne's smile faltered. Julien's hands shook, and Claude's scowl deepened. Poirot's trap was set, but the killer's next move was uncertain. Moments later, Isabelle returned, breathless, her eyes wide. "Monsieur Poirot," she gasped. "I saw it again, the cloaked figure, in the garden." Poirot's pulse quickened, but he remained calm. "Describe it, mademoiselle." Isabelle's voice trembled. "Tall, hooded, moving toward the gate. I couldn't see the face." Poirot noted her muddy shoes, a detail she hadn't explained. "Curieux," he said, "that you venture into the mist, yet claim fear." Isabelle's tears fell, but she offered no reply. Poirot dismissed the group, his mind a whirl of order and method. The gambit had stirred the pot, but the killer remained elusive. He returned to the study, drawn to the threatening letters. The latest note, addressed to him, was a bold move, suggesting the killer's confidence. He examined the lion's seal under his magnifying glass, noting a faint irregularity, a scratch, barely visible in the wax. "Des fleurs," he murmured, "or a clue." He thought of Julian's payments to E.D., Vivian's cloak, Claude's rage, Isabel's muddy shoes. Each was a thread, but the tapestry was incomplete. He crossed to the library, retrieving the heraldry book. The Dubois crest, a lion rampant, was similar but not identical to the seal. Was it a forgery or a descendant's adaptation? The police records had confirmed Etienne's existence, but his whereabouts were unknown.
Isabel's flight, her muddy shoes, suggested she knew more than she admitted. Vivian's composure was cracking, Julien's lies were unraveling, and Claude's rage was a volatile spark. Poirot's gambit had shaken them, but the truth remained just out of reach. As he stood by the window, a faint noise came from the corridor, a soft scrape, like a door easing shut. Poirot's senses sharpened, his cane silent as he moved to investigate. The hallway was empty, but a draught stirred the air, carrying the faint scent of lavender. Vivienne's perfume, or another clue. "The killer is close," he whispered, "and Poirot is closer." Chapter 9. The Final Clue. The Château de Lyon study was a crucible of secrets, its air thick with the scent of wax and betrayal as the 1930s mist pressed against the windows, cloaking the world in a ghostly veil. Hercule Poirot stood before the mahogany desk, his gloved hands holding the latest letter, its lion rampant seal gleaming under the lamplight. The scream that had drawn him here moments ago still echoed in his mind. A servant's cry upon discovering the note, its chilling message. "Time runs out, monsieur." A direct challenge to his intellect. The paper was unpoisoned, its texture matching the fatal letter that had claimed Countess Elodie de Lyon's life. But its presence was a bold stroke, placed while Poirot was in the salon. His moustache twitched, his grey cells alight with the certainty that the killer was near, their arrogance a crack in their carefully woven web. "The final clue," he murmured, "lies in the smallest detail, and Poirot sees all." The study was unchanged since Elodie's death. The velvet drapes, the gilded mirror, the open window with its smear of mud. The cache of threatening letters, each bearing the lion rampant, lay beside the old love letters from Armand Dubois, their rose and serpent seals, a whisper of Elodie's scandalous past. The police records had confirmed her betrayal of Armand, a diplomat ruined by her accusations of fraud, leaving a son, Etienne, who had vanished from record. The burn to the study, his voice calm but unyielding as she entered, her grey dress blending with the shadows, her eyes wide with dread. "Mademoiselle Dubois," Poirot began, holding up the letter. "This seal bears your initials. Did you forge it to hide your theft, or to murder Madame la Comtesse?" Isabel's face crumpled, tears streaming as she sank into a chair. "I didn't kill her, monsieur. I swear it. I made the seals, yes, but not the poison. Someone forced me." Poirot leaned closer, his gaze piercing. "Forced you? Who, mademoiselle?" Isabel's voice broke. "I don't know his name. A man, cloaked, came to me weeks ago. He knew of my theft, a brooch, years back. He said he'd expose me unless I forged the seals, placed the letters." Poirot's eyes gleamed. And the cloaked figure? Etienne Dubois, perhaps? Isabel shook her head. I never saw his face. He left notes, payments, under my door. Her confession was a floodgate, but Poirot pressed further. The mud on your shoes, mademoiselle, from the garden. Were you meeting this man? Isabel's sobs intensified. No, I followed him last night to see who he was. I lost him in the mist. Poirot noted her sincerity, but her story was a thread, not the tapestry. He dismissed her, his mind racing. Isabel's role was clear. She forged the seals under duress, but the poison was another's hand. The initials ID were a misstep, a clue the killer hadn't intended. Poirot turned to Julien Morel next, summoning him to the study. The secretary's cufflinks glinted, but his face was pale, his hands unsteady. Monsieur Morel, Poirot said, your ledgers show payments to E.D. Not Etienne, but Isabelle Dubois, perhaps? Did you orchestrate the letters to cover your embezzlement? Juliette tightened on her cigarette holder, but she said nothing, her silence a confession of sorts. Claude Beaumont was last, his anger a storm as he stood before the desk. Monsieur Beaumont, Poirot said, your aunt's scandal with Armand Dubois ruined a man, perhaps your father. Did you use Isabelle to forge the seals? Claude's voice was raw. I told you, I'm not his son. Elodie raised me, then discarded me. I didn't need letters to hate her. Poirot leaned forward. Yet your walk that night. Did you meet this cloaked figure? Claude's jaw tightened. I saw no one. Poirot noted the lie, subtle but present in the clench of his fists. The interviews complete, Poirot paced the study, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. Isabelle's confession had shifted the puzzle. She forged the seals, coerced by an unknown man, but the poison was another's work. Julien's payments suggested he was entangled, perhaps blackmailed, or blackmailing. Vivienne's cloak and knowledge pointed to her involvement, but her denial was too vehement. Claude's rage was a spark, but his lies were inconsistent. The lion's seal, with its ID mark, was the killer's mistake, a clue to their identity. Poirot's gambit had forced a reaction. The new letter, the scream. But the killer remained a shadow. He returned to the letters, examining the latest under his magnifying glass. The ID mark was deliberate, perhaps a taunt from the true killer, using Isabelle as a scapegoat. He thought of the cloaked figure, the mud, the burned fragments. The police records had confirmed Etienne Dubois' existence, but his absence suggested he was a ghost. Or a fiction. Poirot's mind churned, connecting the old scandal to the present murder. Elodie's betrayal of Armand had left a legacy of hate, but the lion seal was modern, its wax fresh. The killer hides in plain sight, he whispered, exploiting the past. A servant's voice broke his thoughts, shaken them, and the new letter was proof of their unease. As he turned from the window, a faint noise came from the corridor, a soft rustle, like paper falling. Poirot moved swiftly, his cane silent, and found another note under the door, its lion seal intact. The message was brief. You are too late, monsieur. His eyes narrowed, his resolve hardening. The killer underestimates Poirot, he whispered.
And that is their final error. Chapter 10. The Unveiling. The grand salon of the Château de Lyon shimmered under the chandelier's crystalline glow, its fractured light casting shadows that danced like spectres across the velvet drapes and gilded mirrors. The 1930s mist outside clung to the tall windows, a silent conspirator in the drama unfolding within. Hercule Poirot stood at the room's centre, his small frame commanding as he faced the assembled household. Julienne Morel, Vivienne Laurent, Claude Beaumont, and Isabelle Dubois. The crash in the library, moments ago, still echoed in his mind. The heraldry book, its lion-rampant page torn out, a final act of desperation from the killer. The latest note, slipped under the study door with its chilling message, "You are too late, monsieur," lay in his pocket, a taunt that only fueled his resolve. Poirot's moustache twitched, his grey cells alight with the certainty of truth. "Mesdames et messieurs," he declared, his voice a velvet blade. "The murderer of Countess Elodie de Lyon stands among us, and Hercule Poirot will now unveil them." The air was thick with tension, the fire in the marble hearth crackling as if in anticipation. Poirot's gambit, announcing he knew the killer's identity, had forced the murderer's hand, and the torn page was their misstep. He had pieced together the puzzle. Elodie's death by a poisoned letter, laced with a rare South American toxin, the lion-rampant seals, forged by Isabelle under coercion, the old love letters from Armand Dubois, revealing Elodie's betrayal, the police records confirming her of the truth. He turned to Julienne Morel, whose cufflinks glinted nervously. "Monsieur Morel, your ledgers revealed payments to E.D., not Etienne Dubois, but Isabelle, to ensure her silence. You orchestrated the threatening letters, did you not?" Julien's face paled, his hands shaking. I paid her, yes, but only to forge the seals. Someone else told me to do it. A voice, notes left in my room. I thought it was a prank. Poirot's eyes narrowed. A prank or a plot? You hid your embezzlement behind these letters, hoping to shift blame. Julien's denial was weak, his guilt evident, but Poirot knew he was not the killer, merely a tool. Claude Beaumont's anger filled the room as Poirot faced him. "Monsieur Beaumont, your aunt's betrayal of Armand Dubois was not your father's ruin, but her rejection fueled your rage. Did you poison her to avenge your lost inheritance?" Claude's fists clenched, his voice raw. "I hated her, but I didn't touch her. I was walking that night. No poison, no letters." Poirot's moustache twitched. "Your lies are thin, monsieur, but your hands are clean of murder." Claude's scowl softened, relief flickering in his eyes, but Poirot's focus shifted. Vivienne Laurent stood, her silk blouse catching the firelight, her smile a fragile mask. "Madame Laurent," Poirot said, his voice rising, "you are the architect of this crime. The lion's seal, your family's crest from a forgotten lineage, was your signature. You poisoned Elodie's letter, exploiting Julienne's scheme and Isabelle's fear." Vivienne's laugh was sharp, her composure cracking. "Ha! Absurd, monsieur. I envied her, yes, but I didn't kill her." Poirot stepped closer, his eyes gleaming. "You deny, but the seal betrays you. Its wax, pressed too firmly, bore a flaw, a crack from your ring. The same ring undoing.
You pressed it with such force, such hatred, that it cracked, leaving your mark. He turned to the others. Monsieur Morel, you facilitated the letters, driven by greed. Mademoiselle Dubois, you forged the seals, trapped by fear. Monsieur Beaumont, your rage was a distraction, a red herring in this tangled web. But Madame Laurent, you wielded the fatal pen. Vivienne's shoulders slumped, her confession spilling like a flood. I hated her, every moment of her perfection. I found the toxin in Paris, mixed it with the ink. The letters were Julien's idea, but I made them deadly. She laughed, a hollow sound. I thought I'd won. Poirot's eyes were steady. You won only your downfall, madame. Justice is the order of the mind, and the mind of Poirot is unyielding. He signalled the servants, who had summoned the gendarmerie. As officers entered, their boots echoing on the parquet, Vivienne was led away, her elegance replaced by defeat. The household dispersed. Julien's head bowed, Isabelle's tears silent, Claude's anger spent. Poirot stood alone, the salon's grandeur now a backdrop to truth. The mist outside began to lift, the chateau's secrets laid bare. He thought of Elodie, her elegance, her fear, her note summoning him. The past betrayed her, he murmured, but the present avenges. He returned to the study, the letters still on the desk, their seals a testament to the killer's pride. The heraldry book, its torn page a final act of panic, lay in the library. The vial of belladonna, the mud, the cloak, all were distractions. But the seal's flaw had been the truth. Poirot's method, order, observation, logic, had prevailed. He gathered the letters, handing them to the gendarmerie for evidence, his work complete. As he stepped into the corridor, the chateau's clock chimed. Its toll, a farewell to the